And hello and welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, it's so great to have you. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Well, I have the pleasure of having someone back again who hasn't been here in a while, but who has been kind enough to join me here in the studio today. His name is Bill Berloni, and he's the head of Theatrical Animals, and I hope that you enjoy getting to know him. And Bill, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Well, you may not recall, but what I like to do at the beginning of the show is to introduce the guest to the viewer. So why don't you take us back into your background? Let us get to know you.
I'm Connecticut born and raised, so I like to say that proudly. I went to Berlin High School where I was class president, and somewhere there I joined the drama club, which then I decided I wanted to become an actor. And through a twist of fate, I ended up training a dog which went to Broadway, which started my animal training career.
Now, let's go back a little bit, because the Goodspeed Theater, which was just a guest last week, is part of your background. Tell us what happened at the Goodspeed.
Well, I decided that I wanted to get a degree in acting. So I went to Central Connecticut State University for 2 years to do my core courses, and then I was going to move to New York City to study at New York University acting department. So instead of wasting my summers having fun with my friends, I thought, well, I want to be around professionals and learn. So I applied for a technical apprenticeship at the Goodspeed Opera House in East Haddam, Connecticut. And as we all know, they're very famous for the musicals that they create and revive. And so I had no technical experience, but they took me anyways. And I had 2 great summers. And in the summer of 1976, the second summer, the new show of the season was a play about Little Orphan Annie. And apparently they realized they couldn't afford a trainer from New York, a dog trainer. So everybody on the paid staff, carpenters, was asked to train the dog, and they all threatened to quit. And the executive producer at the time, Michael Price, needed someone he could persuade to be the dog trainer. So I was called into his office, and he sat me down and he said, Billy, how would you like a part in one of our shows and your equity card, which is the union card? Now, I'm all of 19 years old and would have been an impossibility, you know. And I was like, thank you, Mr. Price. And I just thought he saw natural acting ability. I mean, why would you ask me? And the statement came, well, all you have to do is find and train the dog for the new show. And I was like, yes, of course, because I wanted to be an actor. It took me a week to realize what I had agreed to. And the key was, in the summer of 1976, Michael Price gave me $35 to buy the dog and feed it all summer. So someone said they had cheap dogs at the animal shelter. So I began the search for Sandy, and I found the original Sandy at the Connecticut Humane Society. Adopted him, trained him as I had trained my own pets, and it seemed to work. We did the show, and it didn't do well critically, so we thought it was dead. And Sandy and I moved to New York City, Greenwich Village, 6'4" walk-up, and I was studying to be an actor when the producers, the director, Martin Chernin, called me and said, we want you to do the Broadway production. I was like, okay, I mean, I could use the money, sure, I'll be a dog trainer. Not knowing that when Annie opened on April 21st in 1977, it would become a world famous hit, and I would become a world famous animal trainer at the age of 20. So that's how it all started.
What was Broadway like? How long were you there? What happened?
It was quite an experience, as you can imagine. Annie was a huge hit. I ended up going to the White House 5 times to perform during that run, and appearances, stars, television shows. The show ran for 8 years, and Sandy became the longest running animal in Broadway history, the 2,333 performances. And then they asked me to do touring companies, and I made a promise to always adopt the dogs that I worked with. So there were the Broadway production and 2 touring companies. So it was quite a whirlwind to begin one's career. So I have fond memories of it all.
Now, you're foundation is acting. How is it that you were able to transition into dog training? Did you have to go to school for that? What was it like for you to switch gears? Did you miss being an actor?
Well, first off, I'm an only child, grew up on a farm in Berlin, and there are pictures of me as a baby, a child, with a collie, my cat, and a rabbit, and they're in the front yard of our home. No fences around the yard, so I must have learned how to play with animals and how to play their games, because if you pull a dog's tail, they're going to run away. So until I went to kindergarten, I remember these animals as being my companions as opposed to my pets. So I had a different sensibility towards animals when I was very young. So fast forward, and I got the assignment for Sandy, and I was like, maybe if I make him think the theater's his home and the kids are part of his family, he would go on stage and do the same thing. So that was my simplistic theory of positive reinforcement training. The acting thing, well, I said to myself, I will pretend to be an animal trainer. I mean, I was always acting like I knew what I was doing when I really didn't. And it actually saved me a lot of rejection, because as I started doing more Broadway shows and saw men my age who could sing better than I could and dance better than I could and were better looking than I was, I thought, I'm probably not going to work much at that. So I'll stick with this dog training thing.
And how has it been for you, what we're getting into, 48 years you had just mentioned?
Yes.
How has it been for you all of this time? And what is your life like? Where are the animals? What do you train now?
Well, it's, I'm so grateful. Imagine finding a career that you enjoy doing and being able to do it for a very long time. I'm up to 33 Broadway shows that we've provided animals for. One is running right now, the revival of Gypsy. I was given a Tony Award for my contribution to the theater. Again, I've written 3 books. But along the way, I've rescued many animals and then started turning my skills towards TV and television. So now our company is doing probably more TV and film than we are theater.
Tell us what the transition has been like. What brought that on?
Well, as I became more known in the New York area, I would get calls from the producers and film people in New York City, and at first I didn't enjoy the filming aspect of it, because there are no laws protecting animals, there's no rules, so they're considered property. And in theater I had set a standard in which I would train the dogs humanely, and that became the standard. But in film it was like, just throw the dog on or the cat on, and. So I shied away from it for a while, and it wasn't until maybe 10 years ago when I was asked to do a TV series that I turned down. The producer asked me why, and I told her, so because they don't treat animals well. And she said, well, if I help you with that, would you work on the series? And I said, yes. And the series was The Leftovers for HBO. And I came in with animals that were used to doing it on the first take. On theater, in theater, they don't get a second chance. So the animals did very well, and so I started getting a reputation. And now we have animals on 2 series. We just had a Hollywood film open up, so it's been a crazy, wonderful life.
The Hollywood film, which people are seeing right now, is on screens. Mm-hmm. Tell us about it.
It's called The Friend, based on a book by the author Sigrid Nunez. And about 5 years ago, 2 filmmakers, independent filmmakers, got the rights to it. And it's a story about a woman in New York who lives alone in her 50s, whose mentor commits suicide, and she inherits his Great Dane. She lives in a small apartment, she can't have dogs, she's never had a dog, but she feels obligated to find this dog a home. And so what we meet are 2 creatures who are grieving the loss of a loved one. And it's a story about the human-animal bond, about how animals heal us and they can enhance our lives. And so I say it's my masterpiece because it's really the story I like to tell with animals. There's no tricks. It's just this dog and this woman and how they come together. And so I'm very proud of it. It opened nationwide. It got great reviews. It's now just started streaming on Apple TV, and stars a great Dane named Bing.
And Bill Murray's in it.
And Bill Murray, yep. And Naomi Watts plays.
And Naomi Watts, good.
Yeah.
So that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, let's hold that thought. We're going to take a break, okay?
Yep.
I'm Deborah Gilbert. You're tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Whether it's the truck attack on Bourbon Street or the wildfires in California, as concerned and generous people consider helping the victims and their families, Better Business Bureau's Wise Giving Alliance encourages you to consider whether crowdfunding posts have gotten permission from the families before using any names or photos of the victims. Don't assume there is an official connection just because photos are displayed. Verify how funds will be used. Be cautious about vague appeals that don't specify the intended use of funds. For example, is money being raised for medical expenses, funeral expenses, or other family needs? Keep in mind that contributions that help a specific individual or family are not deductible as charitable contributions on your taxes. And note that while some crowdfunding sites do take precautions in carefully screening, vetting, and managing posts after a tragedy, others might not. Tragedies can generate donation requests from a variety of organizations. We urge donors to check out charities by visiting give.org to verify if the charity meets the 20 BBB standards for charity accountability.
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. And as always, it's so great to have you. Thank you for being here. My conversation continues on with Bill Berloni. And Bill, we were talking about the website. Let's talk about theatricalanimals.com. What will the viewer find if they visit the site?
Well, they would find lists of the credits that I have in theater, film, television, a little bit about our history, a little bit about my career and my animal advocacy for humane treatment of animals.
Humane treatment of animals. We talked about that during the break. Tell us about that.
You know, growing up, I had a dog, as I said, and when that dog passed away, we went to the pet shop, got another dog. So I'd never been to an animal shelter, and the day that I went looking for the original Sandy, I was profoundly moved because I went to a number of shelters and the conditions were horrible, and you know, they were dirty, and when I found Sandy, the dog that I wanted to adopt, I couldn't adopt him because I didn't have enough money. The fee was $7 and I had $3. And he was going to be euthanized the next morning. And I had no idea what that meant. So when they told me he was going to be put to sleep and killed, I left the shelter just upset because here's an animal I had touched that was going to die. Well, I got back to the Goodspeed Opera House and my roommate gave me $4 and I went back the next morning and adopted him. But in that moment when I left the shelter, I made a promise to myself, if I ever get a dog when I grew up, I would adopt it. So I had this career where we had animals in many shows, so I started adopting them and then using the publicity we got to talk about shelter animals and the need for adoption. Currently, I've been the director of animal behavior for the Humane Society of New York in New York City for the last 30 years. It's a no-kill shelter, but I do, wherever we go, I try to raise awareness and help, you know, people think about adopting. And, you know, like if I have a Toto and people say, oh, he's so well trained, it's like, you could have adopted this dog before I did. They're great animals at the shelter.
There are probably people that watch this program because it deals with arts, entertainment, and culture all the time saying, I'd like to do what he's doing. How did you find your ability to be able to train an animal? Is there a process that you use to do it?
Again, it was my experiences. Back in the 70s, animal training was negative reinforcement trained, choke collars, that sort of stuff. And I came along with this method of positiveness where if you're kind to an animal and you set up a situation where they want to do things, they will. And that's what I think, when Annie opened, there had never been an animal to play a character in a live theatrical event because everybody thought, you can't depend on an animal to do the same thing every night, 8 shows a week in front of 2,000 people, when in fact you can. Because if they felt safe and they knew what they were doing, they would do it every night. So I was the first person to use positive reinforcement in the training of an animal for the entertainment industry. And so I hope that my skills and I'm leading by example, because I know a lot of other trainers who are now adopting animals and using them in shows and TV.
I think you have your animals at your home, would I be correct?
Correct.
Is there a process that you bring in a dog, or what animals do you have that you train?
Currently we have 26 dogs, 3 cats, a macaw, and 3 donkeys. Only the dogs work. And they're dogs, like there are 3 successful shows we've done: Annie, The Wizard of Oz, and Legally Blonde. So there are productions all over the world that require the trained dogs. And so we have 4 Sandys, we have 2 Totos, we have 3 Chihuahuas. And my home is like, there are young ones being trained, they're the ones who are paying the mortgage, and then there are the ones who are retired. We give them a forever home. So it's an interesting life. And when you say 26 dogs, I imagine people are like, oh, it must be a mess. Well, the Discovery Channel did a reality show about us called From Wags to Riches with Bill Berloni, and it was for children programming. So you could look that up, and they came to our house and shot for 6 months, and you could see how our house was designed and how we handle the needs of 26 animals who have all been homeless but now have a place to live. 6
months. What was it like having a film crew there the whole time?
Great. I was like, I didn't have to go to New York. They'd get there at 8, I'd have my coffee, be ready. And yeah, the fun thing was, because it was children's programming, a lot of the situations were somewhat fabricated for drama. But they came to the house, but they also came to the Humane Society of New York, watched my work there, and then they came to shows and film sets and watched me work there. So again, I just want people to know you could see my home and the way we do it on TV.
Now, you were telling me or us that the animals are on different projects. Do you have other trainers that work for you that are with these animals while they're touring or performing?
Yes. I mean, whenever there's a show, there's obviously a trainer who lives with them, travels with them, works with them. My gift, which I've discovered, is to be able to take an animal and understand what their needs are, and then take the needs of the production and then find a way to make them come together, which is where I think my background in acting helped me out, because I knew what the expectations were. So I just go from project to project now, setting it up, getting it going, and then we'll bring one of my trainers in. We have 6 people who are like family to me, and they will run the projects. And so that's how we've been doing it,
Congratulations. There's a big event coming up at the Goodspeed, their gala, and they're honoring you. Tell us about that.
I'm a little, I'm very honored. I was in disbelief when they asked, because again, the Goodspeed Opera House is a very famous place, and their big gala is their fundraiser, and they thought that the hometown boy, instead of the New York celebrity, might be the one to be a good draw. And so I'm very honored. It's coming up on May 17th. They have a number of surprises for me, and I cry all the time. I just anticipate being a mess. But yeah, it's quite a thing to know that I started there as an apprentice and have had a career that they're proud of.
Your books. Talk about your books.
When Annie first opened, Simon & Schuster called me and said they'd like to do a children's book about him. So we did a book called Sandy, the Autobiography of a Star, which was told in the dog's first-person voice about becoming homeless, meeting me, and then becoming a Broadway star. And then about 20 years later, I did a book called Doga. A person called up and said, we're doing this book and we want photographs of dogs doing yoga. And I said, well, dogs don't do yoga like that. Well, they do natural poses. I'm like, yeah, when they feel like it, but not when you feel like it. But we were able to create dog poses for this book. But my third book is called Broadway Tales, the heartfelt stories of animals on Broadway. And it's basically an autobiography, but it's a humane education book. So every chapter is one of my shows and the rescue story behind it and how we actually trained the dog and what happened. I did it 10 years ago when I had done 22 Broadway shows. And then I had done another 5 Broadway shows, and the publisher said, "You want to do another edition?" And I said, "Sure." That did well, and the third edition came out a couple years ago because we got up to 30 Broadway shows. So it's a beautiful project, and again, every story has a happy ending. Some of them don't start out very well in terms of where the animals were, and when things didn't go wrong, we would leave. But so Broadway Tales. If you love animal stories in theater, I would suggest that you get it.
What about the individual that's watching us now that says, "Oh my goodness, I love what Bill's doing. I want to be an animal trainer." How does somebody get started? What would your recommendation be?
Because many people, and I feel privileged, will write and say, "I want to do what you do." And there aren't many schools that have degrees in animal behavior, and there aren't many entertainment trainers. I mean, there's a handful in the country. And so how do you apprentice with someone? It's not an easy profession to get into, and certainly you can become a good pet trainer and train people's pets, but you really have to have a background in entertainment to be able, again, to cross over. I just tell people to follow their heart, enjoy working with animals in some capacity in the veterinary schools or in training classes, and if that opportunity opens up, take it and see where it goes.
You're in this 48 years. What's the next? Do you have a plan? A year, 2, 5 years, 10 years out? Will you stay doing what you're doing?
It was 2 years ago, my 50th high school reunion, and I went, and I was kind of shocked at how old everybody acted and looked, and they'd been retired, and I'm still like chasing that next show, that next movie, that next TV show. So it's keeping me alive. I mean, in 2 years, in 27, it'll be the 50th anniversary of the Broadway production of Annie, and being one of the few standing, it's getting lonely, but no, I want to do it as long as I possibly can. My wife Dorothy we've been married over 25 years, and it's a little labor intensive, but we haven't turned to each other and said, next year's the year. So who knows?
What's it like being on a film or television set, or even in theater? How are animals being treated? Are you pleased with what's happened since when you first started to now?
Again, the Annie experience sort of set a standard for Broadway that had never been set in terms of animals, and I'm very proud of that. The film industry, there are no laws protecting animals. There's no unions protecting animals or animal trainers. And so whenever I go on set, I become an advocate for the humane treatment of animals. And sometimes that goes against what needs to happen on a set. And, I'm unwavering in my commitment to my animals. And so I have this reputation of being difficult because I'll say no. Everybody says yes to the director. I go, no, we're not doing it. Could cause some friction. But again, by demanding that I get rest times for the animals, or a holding space, a dressing room where they can be, calm in between takes. At least in New York, that's starting to be adhered to a little bit more. And we do work with the American Humane Association, the group that puts that no animals were harmed, thing at the end of the film. And they're great. Sometimes I could say to them, you tell the director no, so they get mad at you. But they're only on movies. They're not on TV shows, they're not on commercials, they're not on photographies. So I always say to people, if you look at a piece of entertainment and the dog's ears are back, or the tail is down, or it's panting, it's probably not happy. And you might want to write a review and check in and say, hey, that dog looks stressed, what's going on? Because producers need to know that the audience does care about animals.
We have just a little time left. Any closing thoughts for the viewer?
My saying is the dog or cat of your dreams is waiting to be adopted. So if you are thinking about, getting an animal, adopt one. You could be getting the next star of your home, and the one that I wanted before you adopted it. So adopt, don't shop.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure having you at the station instead of by Zoom like last time.
Yep. Let's do this again in a couple years.
Okay.
Okay.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Yep.
I'm Deborah Gilbert. You've been tuned in to Arts and Entertainment. In case you need to reach me, I'm at artsandentertainment@mail.com. Well, I hope you have a super day today. I really hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.